Hey guys, I do have a question. It seems for whatever reason, I am not able to open the panel view. I've gone to the link that Chad put in, and then I had another resource that Leo had given me a long time ago that I've been using.
Tony, I'm going to send you 2 links in Discord. Use the first one. Oh, close your browser completely. Use your first link that I send you to make sure that you get authenticated, and then use the second link to try and get into panel view, please.
I absolutely understand the technical reason for the dark shifting colors, and appreciate that burn-in is a huge deal for things like the Countdown Climber, but it's still really, really hard to see. So I wonder if that would be a difficult challenge, to make something that has to show up all the time that you don't want it to cause burn-in, but it still needs to cycle.
Remember the early LEDs at the airport? They would be etched physically because of the...
Well, all the early, what was it? Not OLEDs, but what was the technology that burned in really badly? There was one of the big screen.
You're talking plasma.
Plasma
TV. There you go. Yeah, those were, man, 6 months into owning one, and you had like the station you mostly watched logo burned into it and would never go away.
Studio I was in Burbank, the client left it on over the weekend. Left color bars on. Right over the weekend. A $10,000 monitor now has permanent edge marks. That was unfortunate. Thank you, client. Kappa Studios, right on Hollywood Way, across from Porto's.
Did the client understand the line item in the bill that said burn in?
We had an amazing engineer that went in and was able to you don't degauss a plasma monitor, but he kind of smoothed it out. But no.
Yeah, same thing we used to do with image orthicon. If somebody shot the sun by mistake with a tube camera.
Bill has sent you a message in panel view.
Thanks,
Good job, Tony. I see you in panel view. Thank you.
Just pulling my headphones, getting ready in case.
So, Mitchell, have you ever had a migraine?
I've had the optical and the other kind.
You know the giddy feeling you have when it finally goes away? Well, I'm 12 hours later, and I'm still kind of giddy that I finally figured this, because for the last 5 days, my machine I just couldn't find the problem.
Sky, giddy up, man.
Moral of the story, don't bury your Stream Deck under a bunch of stuff on your desk.
So we have questions in, and we have a good group where there's 18, I believe, at this point. We could use a few more questions. And if the panel is of a mind, please, and everybody watching, vote those questions up and down. Make sure that we know what you want to talk mostly about this morning. All right. So is the thought, sans Alex, I'll just go at the top of the hour?
Yeah.
Copy that. "30 seconds.
I think I just ended the other meeting by accident. So hold on 1 second here. You have to reset the clock. Just reset the clock for 2 minutes. I gotta launch the other. I just forgot, and I just went through the automatic like jumping. You just need to reset that clock to 5 minutes. We're going to be a little late. Oh, I guess it's still open. Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing it open, Alex.
Then I don't know. I thought it said closing meeting when I left. So go ahead and just set that clock to 2 minutes.
Alex, pin, please.
1 minute. Yeah, sure.
I am seeing a warning saying the current bit rate is lower than the recommended bit rate.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Just ignore that. It's not accurate. You never need to bring it up again. It's a completely inaccurate message.
Got it.
Those are not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah. They give you 40 seconds, Alex.
Okay, great. So I am assuming that the other meeting is still running. It says it still is on the back end. So we're good. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is about something we'd like to spend a little more time on. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about our graphics, actually, in Office Hours 2.0. So we're going to talk about what we like, what we don't like, and figure out where we want to go from there as a group. I know it's not the normal way to do it, but it's the way we do it. We'll learn on our way. And then tomorrow we'll be talking about online concerts and how artists are reaching out to their fans. And so we'll talk about some approaches there. Friday, we're going to talk about the mechanics of Office Hours 2.0 and just what we're changing, how it's working. So not so much the graphics, but just the back end and kind of walking through that. Of course, Saturday is education. First 2 hours, second 2 hours at 8 and 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time are education. We don't put those on YouTube. At 10 o'clock, we're going to start our MakerBit build. So we're going to be building using a little microbits and building those out. It should be a lot of fun. We've got a good group, and I think it'll be fun to watch. So stay tuned for that. And then on Sunday, of course, is our more philosophical, collection, and where we sit around and talk a little bit about what we're doing and why we're doing it. All right, let's jump into the questions. Bill, take it away.
Thank you, Alex. Good morning, one and all, or afternoon and evening, wherever you are. George Butters has our first question from Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he says, how do you deal with a prospective client who might be new to contracting for AV services and who shows up with champagne and caviar appetites, but only a beer budget?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I think you have to be ready to walk away. Sometimes when you're talking to a client and their expectations cannot be met, and the budget's definitely nowhere near, you have to say, thank you very much. We're obviously not a good mix. But generally, I throw at them the Sears tried and true, good, better, best, and I throw numbers out there. And depending on how they respond to those numbers will determine how you can approach the project before you give them a budget or a prospective presentation. But it's a tough scenario.
Go ahead, Sky.
A recent tool that Alex has shared with me is the cost of a Disney Plus or the Apple products are at $72,000 a production minute. And that's what the quality. So it gives them perspective of what something could cost and it's something they consume. So your point about champagne or a Cadillac or whatever that expectation is what are the numbers, Alex? You've shared that before.
They're all over the place, but typically when you're looking at Netflix, you're probably talking. I don't have the exact numbers, but they're what I understand is they start in the vicinity of about $75,000 a minute. For a major piece of content. I mean, some can be as little as $25,000 a minute, and then the highest end for most productions is somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000 a minute, which is those are the big shows, so it's I think people have to kind of get their head around that.
Yeah. Well, and that oftentimes even a discovery show starts at $600,000.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Bill.
For most of us who are doing non-high level stuff, though, I also be cautious because sometimes the relationship that you're establishing with your client is as important as the actual numbers. And the reason I'm saying that is that I had circumstances where even though it was a relatively large client, I was new into their operation and they're giving me a beer budget or sometimes even a soda water budget. And they're assessing me and saying, how good are you? And can you handle this stuff? So by saying yes and working within those limitations, sometimes you can build yourself into a long-standing relationship with a good client. So part of it is client assessment too. Is this somebody who's going to be a grinder who, as you know, they're going to give you the minimum amount possible and always come back and push on every dollar? Those are going to eat up way more time often than they're worth, and you have to get rid of them. But if you see a potential, if it's something you really love doing and you want to go there, I was willing in my early career to work for people on tough budgets because I just really resonated with them. And some of those turned out to be my best clients for decades.
You go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, in the corporate world, we used to have what was called a gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper understood the project, understood their vendors, and understood you. Nowadays, I'm running into more and more bean counters, with lack of a better term, and they don't understand any of that. They don't know what your value is. They just know what the bottom line costs are. So you have to be sensitive to that because your clientele has changed.
Yeah, I think that for me, I often just try to figure out. I oftentimes will ask, "What is your budget?" Because then it makes it easy for me to create something that's inside of whatever they've given me. A lot of people don't want to do that, so they just want you to give them a bid. So we talk through it in detail. I really want to know all the details, and I have to admit, I'm notorious for hanging out on the budget for a while to make sure that they settle, so I can try to figure out exactly what the number is going to be. Then I give it to them, and then if they don't want to pay that, we figure out a way to cut things out. Usually, I don't usually walk away as much as I say, well, we'll have to remove something to get there, and so we kind of walk through that. Now they may choose to walk away at that point. But I let them choose to do that. I will give them, this is what we can do, and this is what the price is there. For me, walking away from a client usually means that they've done something. Like, it's not so much they don't have the budget, but they've done something that I feel puts me at risk or puts the company at risk. And then if they do that, then I'm pretty quick about not moving forward. Next question.
Next one comes from Brett Ramsey in Melbourne, Australia. He says, what's the opinion of the basic ATEM Mini for small-scale streaming? The Pro and the ISO are way outside my budget, but I can pick up a second-hand ATEM for about $350 Australian. Should I?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
However you get out to stream, do it. So if you can pick that up, go ahead. I would actually spend the $68 Australian more, because that's how much it's going to cost for a brand new ATEM rather than get something used. But do it, and then you'll start making enough money so you can actually get the bigger ones, and then you can sell that one used or use it for something else.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
You might save money on the basic end of buying a inexpensive ATEM Mini, but you're going to pay for it somewhere down the line with a streaming computer that can do it. So it's better, like Jeffrey said, to spend the extra money and buy one that's a pro version that can do the streaming. Now you've solved one problem, two problems.
Good, Sky.
For the last 2 years, that exact machine has been in a house of worship run by volunteers. Now, it's not been moved around. It's not been unplugged every day. It's just been sitting there, but it's been working consistently for the last 2 years. So there's the value there.
Good. Tim?
Yeah, I think exactly the same thing was Mitch said, basically, that you're going to pay for it somewhere. So OBS would be a cheap solution to get you at least started to stream. But the pro level will get you a streaming box that's isolated from any computer problems. So I would agree with that.
If you have a computer that can actually stream, you could potentially use it as the switcher and then have that computer just be dedicated to streaming. So it just depends on whether you have a computer that's available to you that's powerful enough to run something like OBS just to encode. So those are the things to kind of consider as well. Next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia is up next. He says, more talk yesterday about Apple's expected dark mode website toggle for Safari. Are you excited? Anyone else hoping it will work on zoom.us? More white space than the Antarctic on some of those pages.
Go ahead, Alex.
Am I excited? No. I actually like my apps and my states to be different in different times. So I don't mind having effectively dark mode and Final Cut Pro in motion, but I like websites and Twitter browsers and other things to be different so I can orient myself. So I don't want lots of things all looking the same and dark. And also it's because I don't have an HDR display. So I don't have beams of light hitting me and giving me suntans all the time. So I don't worry about that.
Yeah, I do think that as we continue to move towards HDR, you're going to see almost everything will go dark mode because it's bad for your eyes. Like it's literally going to cut a hole in your eyes if you keep on looking at a bright monitor. And anybody designing websites, you have to go to dark. Like, because there's extensions for Chrome that will already allow people to just force it to dark, and you just got to make sure it's operational in a dark mode because there's going to be more and more users as their monitors keep on getting brighter that are going to continually look for some way to force it to dark mode if you don't produce it in dark mode. So it's just that is the trajectory of the internet, and so it's just a matter of figuring out when you're going to give up and move to that. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the better thing is to have the website, as you said, the website should be doing the dark mode rather than the browser be doing the dark mode. Good example is Amazon, where the pictures are all going to be on a white background, and having that just kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, and I'm even moving. I mean, for years, because of people printing my slide decks, I was always working in a white mode so that it didn't use as much ink. And it's been hard for me to switch over because it's my whole design process is all around white. so it's been something that I've been kind of working through. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina, and he says a colleague is running into issues with his Teradek Bolt 4K systems. He has both a 750 and a 1500, and he's getting frequent dropouts, even when the receiver is just 10 to 15 feet away. Should he be chasing frequency conflicts, or are there any other ideas people have?
The first thing that I would do would be to change the frequencies, exactly what he's talking about there. The other thing is to consider what in the room has metal. Because I will say that we've had issues with lots of metal around the Teradeks specifically. It shouldn't matter, but it seems to. And absolutely, there's something wrong at 10 or 15 feet. So I would, at that point, if I changed the frequencies, if I was in a clear space and I was still getting those conflicts, I would absolutely call Teradek and get on the phone with them because there's something then very wrong because those transmitters we've used a lot of them or used them a lot and found that they had great range even in the areas that I just talked about. So it is an anomaly. Next question. Oh, and check frame rate. Your frame rate. Make sure that try lowering the frame rate. If it's for instance, if you're running at 60 or something like that, try 30 and find out if it's not congesting. Next question.
Joshua Minden's up next from Madison, Wisconsin in the USA. He says, what's the best way to get word out across office hours and after hours to recruit help? Hoping to develop an iOS app with one of our after hours members who is training for the Paralympics in swimming. Already shared on hashtag I need help in Discord. Other suggestions?
Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, I'm a part of various communities on Facebook, and Production Peeps, PEEPS, might be a resource for you. I think it might be a private group, but reach out because there's, as there are people that have multiple talents that are in production.
And go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Take it outside of Discord and see if there's people that are willing to help. You never know; they might come back. They might come back in and become panelists and a part of the office hours group.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to use the system as designed, and Joshua, you've already done a little bit of this, the easiest way to move through office hours and after hours specifically is to become involved. And you're getting into a perfect example of farming versus hunting and gathering. So you need something right now, that's hunting and gathering. Farming is spending a lot of effort and time or some effort and time over a long period to develop the capacity to feed yourself, in this case, with talent. And so hunting and gathering is a great way to handle today. Civilization was built on farming, and so you want to really think about how, being more available in after hours, showing up on the panel more often. It means more people know you and know who you are. It makes it a lot easier to cut through that process. Asking questions like this is a great one. People might contact you now, but if you have something to share, what you do, because you've been on our panel and you're great, continue to do that in after hours and office hours. That won't solve what you need right now, but it gets to a point where it's pretty effortless to find people, because people will find you and people who know who you are. But that's how the system is designed to support folks that already have talent and already have, there's some people here that are learning and picking up speed in different areas, but there's other people that already have something. When you give back to that community, you're basically connecting with them and getting known by that community. And the design of the system is then you can then find people that you need in a more fast fashion. so that's how I would recommend using the system. Next question.
Next one comes from Andy Carluccio in Washington, D.C., and he says, anyone attending USITT, which I believe is the U.S. Institute of Theater Technology, in Baltimore. I'll be there Friday supporting virtual theater and performances. Would love to see any office hours folks at the trade show and plan to report back to the group after.
We can't wait to get to the report. And I think that what would be great is if we should start looking at the event calendar and figure out how do we have people on site. Like, I'm not interested in going to those things, but I'd love to have somebody local or someone semi-local or people that are willing to travel, go to those locations and be our eyes and ears. And I think that, with more warning, we could probably get a live view and we could have you roaming around and having us ask questions about lights and speakers and things and all of those bits and pieces. And so I think it'd be great to have, different members or the same members, if they're willing to travel, be our eyes and ears in a lot of these locations and let us, all see it from a distance. And I think that we could make it a great experience and it'd be great I think really in the end, great for those conferences, because a lot of us would, it's like having a lot more people show up. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, having been a veteran of covering NAB and other conferences as kind of a reporter, in fact, I was on a press pass for many years, as were others who were involved here in office hours. Being able to cover a show has a lot of logistics challenges. And I was wondering if we should get together in after hours or something like that and set up some standards for kind of how to do it. I know that remote broadcasting or webcasting out of those things is more and more possible, but there's things like hooking up second mics to phones to get out and things like that might be worthy of a discussion to kind of form a little press corps.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way I've done, as you know, I've done a lot of these for the last 20 years. We've been covering these events, the last 15 heavily. The first step would be simply to have a live view with a camera op and a handful of people that'll support it. That's like literally that with a camera, with a host that's willing to go and answer questions or ask questions for us. It would be the first place that I would go with that. If we can build a better relationship with those conferences, a lot of them will give us a desk. So Twit had a desk. I've been working on things where we have a space and now these conferences are a lot more flexible about that because they have a lot more space available. So, giving us somewhere where we can bring people for interviews and to look at things is more possible. And so I think that those, having a space, preferably actually off the, what would be great is like in a convention center, having a space somewhere in the convention center, but not on the floor, where we can build a little studio where we can bring people in. And I don't even need a host in there. We want to bring those people in and let them talk straight to us, but have the cameras and so on and so forth set up to do that. So that would be a great step 2. But step 1, live view with a camera and a wireless mic. I've covered a lot of events that way and it works really well. We did the Pixel Core with NAB all the time. Go ahead, John.
Sounds great, Alex. Do we call those people legacy reporters?
Legacy reporters. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think that there's, I think that potentially we could get to a point where we're representing, 1,000 people going to a booth for the vendors at that booth. That's a huge opportunity, for them, and especially when you look at the things that are, because I think that as we've been modeling where we wanted to go with conferences before COVID, we really wanted to get to everyone having a 10-foot booth and us having a camera that goes from booth to booth, so as opposed to, and then we realized it could just be studios that we just have 2 or 3, eventually 2, 3, 4 studios where they do it. And instead of spending all day sitting there talking to people, they literally spend a couple hours, really talking to a lot of people all at one time. Could be a bit more efficient. Next question.
Simon Ray in Shrewsbury in the UK is up next. He says, what are the panel's favorite apps for storyboarding ideas for shows or for other productions?
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, of course, the original is the pen and the piece of paper, because what you're trying to do is get your idea visually into the DP, the lighting, the set. And so consequently, I've gone through a lot of different versions. But last week we were introduced to Storyboarder, and I put the link there. It's in Makana. And that looks like a really amazing tool that's very functional and simple to use and able to get the idea of concept. Again, remember, this is just a pencil sketch because you're trusting your artist to bring their skill to, flesh out what you're trying to envision for your audience.
Yeah, Storyboarder looked really there's Storyboarder, but was that the 3D one that they were showing?
Yeah,
and I don't see 3D in it right now. I'm just seeing.
Their website is still in development. Looks like they're pretty new.
But what was the one that was the Jeff and
that was
Jeff and Andrew
Storyboarder.
It doesn't show. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Storyboarder. Yeah, I thought that looked really impressive.
Yeah,
and it's definitely something that I would like to play with more.
And a lot of templates in there too. Then the animatronic, or what's when you have your characters.
Yeah, you have IK inverse kinematics.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Bill.
All of those things are great for people who have any artistic ability whatsoever. I do not, and so I tend to do cut and paste storyboards. So it's just a process of bringing, just looking on the web. You're not using these for anything other than your own visualization tools. So I do a lot of cut and pasting of people into either Omnigraphal or something equivalent that's just a simple little graphics environment where I can move things around and make my own storyboard pages. So there's not only one way, there's plenty of ways to do this.
I actually think that the thing about Storyboarder is that doesn't require any sketching because you're just dropping little characters in and being able to move them around where you do. So, and they just grab models and throw them, 3D models and throw them in and be able to frame them and stuff like that. I think that was the point when they showed them to us last week, was that they didn't need to draw anything, which was important for them. It looks really impressive. Next question.
Tim Holm in San Lorenzo, California is up next. He said, is there a noise assist type filter for OBS? I know it wouldn't be fantastic, but is there something that is at least slightly usable?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Tim, running it through OBS, I guess you want it to be real time. And that's the trick, is that most software wants to run on a hardware DSP box like the Mix Pre, which is so good, or the Waves device, Universal Audio. Most of the software based systems are done in post and not so much in real time unless you dedicate it to a hardware box.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
These are hugely useful tools, but I would also say that don't let it null you into to not paying attention to working as hard as you can to get good original audio sources. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes clients providing you with audio and it's just poorly recorded. But I would always try to get a good signal recorded in the field rather than trying to rely on any of these tools to do it if that's possible.
Next question.
Alton Christensen in New York City says, following up on a request yesterday regarding making the Filmic Remote iOS app available on Apple's M1 devices, express your enthusiasm to the folks at Filmic at support@filmicpro.com.
Go ahead, Sky.
I've done it on 3 of my email addresses, so there's 3.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so we'll see if this gets their attention. So our request for you is to, and we'll put it into the chat there, support@filmicpro.com, and send them an email and say we'd really love to see the report, an iPad/M1 version of the remote app for Filmic. It would definitely be useful for a lot of us. So hopefully they will get the message. So let's all. We've been pretty. It's a good experiment to see how effective we can be as a group. So give it a shot. Support@filmicpro.com. All right, next question.
Benign brigading. Molly Eisen in Atlanta is next with our questions. Is an external mic necessary when filming a video message given by one person using an iPhone 13 to be shared over Zoom? I'm looking at a Shure MV88 Portable iOS mic for iPhone or Lav Mic with adapter compatible with iPhone. Am I on the right track?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yes, you are, Molly. That's the first thing that usually falls down on somebody that's doing a homebrew Zoom meeting with an iPhone. I can't tell you how many people I've said, look, all you need to do is take this little clip-on lavalier, and now you've improved your Zoom meeting by multitudes. That's the way to go. You can also check out Rode. They have a multitude of lavs and various mics that can work for you.
There you go, Jeffrey.
I thought the MV88 actually hooked over the phone, which which works in its own right. Another company I would suggest looking at is Movo, MOVO, because they have a device that's actually wireless and it plugs right in the side of the phone, and then of course you can use the lavalier, and that's 2.4 gigahertz wireless. So it at short range it'll work perfect, and it'll get as close to the mouth as possible.
Okay, good, Bill.
That is always the best thing, is to get the mic off the camera and as close to the mouth of the person speaking as possible. If you cannot do that, though, these iDevices and things actually are pretty decent, but the key is to make sure that you get the device as close to you as possible and that you're in an environment where there's not a lot of competing sounds. So if you can go someplace really quiet, use the widest camera on your phone possible, get that mic close, that'll give you very decent results if you have no better option.
Yeah, and Rode makes a lot of good ones, and also Ceramonic makes ones that are designed specifically for wireless to the phone. You can use a Lav. Another thing to think about is you can look at headsets like the Pulson or the a variety of little headsets that you can put on that would go to a transmitter that would go to one of those receivers that, again, is designed directly into it. So, again, Ceramonic's been doing this for a long time through either headphone jacks or through Lightning, and they have a lot of history, and Rode makes some good ones as well. All right, let's jump into the next question.
Jeremy White in Virginia in the U.S. says, yesterday in After Hours, John Ittelson showed a Radial Engineering J-ISO that he uses to take balanced audio from his mixer to his ATEM, which is unbalanced. What are these devices called in general, and does anyone have any other recommendations?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Isolation, amplifiers, matchers. The common company out there that does it is Henry Engineering. They make a couple of devices, and they're both ways. They can fix consumer level up to an XLR or an XLR down to consumer level. They're really good at isolating and for matching levels. Another one would be RDL, would be another possible use.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them are called direct boxes, are kind of the general term for them there. Next question.
Next one comes from our own Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia, and he says, I could not be on yesterday for the 2.0 review. Will there be time in After Hours where we can get a review for those of us who could not be present?
Yeah, we'll probably do some more after-hour sessions for that in the not-too-distant future. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas says, President Biden mentioned in the State of the Union that it's time for Americans to get back to work. People working from home can feel safe to begin to return to the office. Is the U.S. government overlooking the benefits of remote and distributed work?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that they want to say things, but the future is going to be more distributed than what old-fashioned views are thinking about right now. Next question.
Tim Holm in San Lorenzo, California says, I want to use a Rode video mic, shotgun mic in my car while on road trips. That part is easy, but I want to use an in-ear as well. Is this possible? And is there an adapter or a link that would work?
Tim, what are you trying to do?
I'm just trying to get better audio, like have an iPhone, you know how you basically just shoot the road as I'm driving down, and then have the shotgun mic facing me, but I want to listen to like a Zoom call or whatever, so that my audio is just better in the car instead of just that, the Bluetooth ear.
So it's like a show. Like, I mean, you're trying to do a show, right? I mean, that's the goal there.
No, I'm just trying to go into After Hours and look cool, actually.
Oh, okay, good. That's still a show. That's still a show.
Yeah, there you go.
Like now we know that you really need very high end professional gear.
That's right.
To make sure that to join After Hours.
I was going to eliminate your name, like not allow you to speak into it, but go ahead. It's fine.
Go ahead, Bill.
If you want something that'll do it, I've had for years one of these. It is a personal headphone monitor with a mic preamp in there. It'll allow you to put in any XLR fed mic. It gives you a nice tap with extra gain for headphones and monitoring, and it even has a belt clip on the back, so you can actually use it when you're operating a camera or something like that. They're very quiet and they're very good.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Tim, I would consider a headset mic. There are inexpensive ones out there, and you got the earphone and you got the mic, and no matter where your head is, it's going to pick it up, and it's going to do it better than a shotgun mic.
Yeah, I think that I'm just trying to find the right interface. This gets back into the same thing that we were talking about with the Shures. Shure has an interface that it's one of the MV series, but I can never remember, which one it is. But it's one of the MV series. It's not the 51 or the 88. But anyway, it has a Lightning interface with a headphone jack, and now I'm not sure if that's only low latency for the XLR going in, or whether it'll actually do the interface or not. So you'd have to take a look at that.
What I'm seeing is like maybe two headphones out and in a Lightning, but I don't see a headphone out and a mic in with a Lightning. That's kind of what would be a perfect scenario. So
I can tell you the way we've done it in the past. And again, this is not the cheap way to approach this, but how we've gotten audio in and out, professional audio in and out, is with a MixPre 2. USB Pre 2. And if you might be able to find one used, they're pretty expensive, new. But what they do is that's XLR in, XLR out, or headphone out. And you basically use a Lightning to USB connector. And then you have to have the USB connector with the power. So you have Lightning power, then you have the USB connector there. It will actually run that MixPre, or no, sorry, USB Pre 2. But there's probably other USB interfaces that you could use as well for that. But you want to get to a USB interface to it. So a Lightning to USB. Now there's a ton of interfaces that would potentially work for you. But it will see those interfaces, or many of them, as you go through that. Next question.
Next one comes from Tim Holm in San Lorenzo, California. Is there a way to set a second scene with the same audio source in OBS with a different delay setting on the audio?
I don't know enough about OBS to answer that question, so I don't know if somebody else here knows. I don't think you could do a different. Go ahead, Tuomo.
So one option might be to use a filter per source, because if you right click on any source, there are filters. If you choose an audio filter, it might be an option there to set the delay for it.
Okay, that sounds great. And by the way, the panel is cutting through these questions like a hot knife through butter. So if the producers want to throw more questions in, there'll be more questions answered. Otherwise, we'll go to graphics early. All right, next question.
Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware is up next, and he says, I need a ruthless review of my glasses. I'll be replacing them in the next few weeks and want a pair that looks best on office hours.
Good, Sky.
Well, since we have the time, I will talk. No, I won't talk slower. But the prop that is a eyewear, you could go Elton John, and you could say this is a statement about my personality, and you could put rhinestones on them, or you could use the subtle of the John Lennon, just the small little round. And again, what's going to look good on your face in relationship to today's style? As I mentioned, those two people, personalities, they had glasses, and that icon became a part of their persona. So there's, again, Alex Goldner is a perfect example. He's being very and now that's the other option you've got there. So of course, now the optics of, are you going to use the gradiated lensing? Again, that's what glasses are for, right? So that you can perceive something at a certain distance. That would be my opinions. And also from a stage point of view, if we ever wanted people to look smart, we always put them in glasses and had a pipe.
Good, Bill.
There's also anti-reflective coating. Just make sure you order that when you order your glasses. They can retrofit it. Most of the optical shops that used to be in malls, and I'm sure they're coming back, can put that optical coating on there. It's very inexpensive, and it does make a significant difference in not reflecting lights and things like that.
Good, Tony.
Do you guys really notice whether people change glasses or not? These are actually new.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, good.
These are the old ones.
I like the new ones.
Could you tell the difference?
Yeah, the new ones are better. New ones are better. Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick.
And these are my Harry Potter glasses. Do what's best for you, how you can see. I like larger glasses rather than smaller glasses, especially since I do have transitions. It makes it tougher to see on there. So just do what works for you, and then whoever's directing you will do a good job in making you look good anyway. So,
next question.
Tim Mann in Melbourne, Australia is up next. He says there's a noise reduction plugin for X32 is there a noise reduction plugin for X32 for live use? Been having some good results using Resolve and using noise reduction in there.
Yeah, I don't know of any plugins for X32s that are really effective at doing noise reduction. We've been asked to do that, and our cheat has been to put a mix pre in front of it. So we'll put a mix pre in front, add noise assist for the inputs that needed that, and called it a day. So that's been. I don't know of anything internal. So you would need some kind of processor like a mix pre either on the front end or the back end. We've done them on the back ends as well, where we just mix the whole show and just remove the noise as it goes through. It's a cheaper version of a cedar box. We used to use cedars that are $4,000 each. That's the stereo version. Then there's also the DNS8, which is 8 individual channels, which we also had to do this noise reduction. And so it's pretty magical. It's very hard to do in real time. That's why it's so rare to find noise reduction especially as a plugin. Is because of that. Next question.
George Butters is back from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and he says, has anyone used the Alfred app for Mac? Deeper, wider search than Spotlight. Add on-the-fly variables to custom searches, then find, copy, paste a file into email, log into a website, X or Y, or search for a month's worth of screen caps. And he has a link there to the app.
Yeah. The interesting thing about Alfred is I know a lot of people that swear by it. I don't put it on because I don't like customized things in my OS very often, because then I work on so many different computers. My problem I get into habits that I can't replicate in other places. And so I used to use a lot of apps like this. I know that some friends of mine just will not work on a machine without Alfred on it. And that's part of the reason I don't. It's because I go through so many machines and I have so many different ones. I don't want to build up behaviors. So that's why I don't use it. But I know that I know some folks that just love it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, President Biden also mentioned that most federal workers will return to in-person work. Do you think that is the case of returning to what they know, or are there specific advantages in most cases?
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, a perspective is the campus that is Microsoft has 40,000 employees in the Redmond area. That's just the employees. That's not the ancillary support systems, the cooks, the chefs, the custodial staff, the people filling the soda machines. And that's again a ripple out of cause and effect of economy. So is it an attitude? Could be. Is it a point of trying to continue to generate economy? Possibly.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot and more every day of classes of jobs that can be done remotely incredibly effectively. And I think whenever that's possible, we are going to see that happening, because the flexibility, the power, everything that Alex talks about in terms of being able to reach more people if you're in any kind of communications aspect, those things are powerful. But there are a number of people who just have to show up in a spot to get their job done, whether that's a factory line or whether that's something specific in the real world. I mean, you can't do gardening virtually. So those kind of things, there's going to be a split. What I hope for as we move forward is that there's parity, so that people aren't forcing people into those big offices where they just sit there doing online stuff all day long, and there's really no reason for them to be doing it. The call centers, there's just almost no reason for that anymore. And I hope the industry and the world understands that that kind of change is well beyond us now.
I don't know how to say this without being political, so I'm just going to keep moving. A lot of this has to do with voting-based structures and where voting-based structures are. And if people leave urban areas, it destabilizes power centralization. So it's we'll just leave it at that. So a lot of people are desperate to keep people in the urban areas because that's where they get their votes. Next question.
Vic Sinise in Lowell, Indiana says, I stream from my local church with OBS. I use CASTR to multicast to Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitch. OBS doesn't show drop frames, but Facebook does and occasionally freezes. Other streams are stable. Thoughts?
I am not as familiar with CASTR as some others may be, so I'm not sure why it would OBS with it. The problem is what if you're looking at OBS and you are outputting it, what it shows you and what it sends out could be very different. So what you need to do is you need to look at whether if you're sending out to YouTube. I guess the question is that you have to compare Facebook with YouTube and Twitch and see if all of them are having issues, or if it's only one of them. If it's one of them, that's an ingest point at the stream. If it is other ones, it is, yeah. So I think that, you have to know whether, when you say it's Facebook, is it Facebook and YouTube and Twitch, or is it all, so if it's not dropping in OBS, but it is dropping on all of those, then it's something in the encode, or what's coming out of OBS. If it's only dropping in one of them, then it's some way that it's ingesting. Now, a lot of times the reason that happens is because the settings that are required, and I don't know CASTR well enough to know, but if it's a generalized setting saying I'm going to do it the GOPS, the group of pictures, might need to be different for Facebook than they are for YouTube or Twitch. So not all of them, like we customize that output for each one of those platforms. So that's that's part of that process. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia says, is it time for Alex to demo a brief keynote during office hours for newbies watching the show?
What would I demo?
Just something like maybe bringing in your video and just.
I have to. I think what I would say is if you ask that question the day before, because that's what we've been opening up these questions. That's the kind of thing that I will prep for. Like if you ask questions that require a little setup, I will absolutely set up for them, but I need warning. So I get up in the morning at about. I'm usually up by 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And one of the first things I do is look at the questions coming in to see if there's any that I might build a little demo around or do a little something, to make it, and so if you ask questions in the late afternoon, evening, after we've flipped it, and we flipped it at 4:00 Pacific Standard Time. But if you get in there and ask those kind of questions, a lot of times I'll set a little something up to show. But it's hard for me if it comes after the show starts, then I don't have anything set up. And it would take me too long and people will be watching and they'd be like, what is he doing over there? Anyway, so but ask that question again and I will put together a little demo. It's always fun. Next question.
Next one comes from Tony Mobley again from Noonan, Georgia. He says, giving my niece a monitor for use with a MacBook Pro M1 as external for a house of worship secondary display. Any other suggestions?
I go, it's Kai.
Well, the thing I'm observing is where are they going to be putting it? And if you don't have a desk or a platform or a staging area back at the back of the sanctuary or area, the worship area, that's the biggest question. Then also your power system. Do you need additional power? And also the cabling. What HDMI cable will go into that particular system? Do you need any adapters or things like that? So the last thing is security. I know many houses of worship are open, and if equipment is left out, it might disappear during the middle of the week. So is it something that needs to be able to be picked up and put into a closet during the midweek?
Go ahead, Tony.
Apologies for not being clear on the question. This is a totally remote virtual service that we're having, and I'm adding I'm giving her the monitor because I'm having office hour withdrawals during our houses of worship services because we're seeing the PowerPoint information of the clicking and all of the different things that are happening. So I wanted to give her the second display so that we wouldn't see all of the sharing that she was doing before it actually came out for everyone to see. So that was the idea, to make it more seamless and a little bit more professional looking on the houses of worship, but everything is virtual. So this is going to be at her house. And so that's why I wanted to see if there were some other suggestions from the panel.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
So I've been using these. They're from a company called Kugoda. They're a 13.3 inch, and I specifically wanted to do that because they're a little smaller than some of the bigger ones that get. And I'm using it in this array here where there's one on this side and one on that side. They have both USB-C and adapters for USB-A, so they're pretty flexible in terms of what you plug in. They've been solid as a rock. They are plug-in. The laptop finds them and uses them without any issue, and I think the color is reasonable. Wouldn't use them for grading, but as a simple external monitor, they've really worked well for me.
Yeah, I have 3 rules for monitors. One is they have to have a VESA mount on the back. Number 2 is they have to use a C13 power supply, which means that's a standard like what you put into your back of your computer. And thirdly, they have to take HDMI in. So if it doesn't have those, I won't buy them. And so the one that usually I end up buying because of that is the Dell either 24-inch 1080p or 27-inch 4K. And that's what I have. I have a whole bunch of them all here because that way I can eventually put them on an ARM, and do it. And I just found that if I have those 3 requirements, the monitors are take a lot less trouble to manage. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama says, I've been playing around with the SPX GC. What's the best way to test your custom template without having to re-import it all the time? Is there an SDK, a software development kit?
If only we had someone that was connected to the development of that app. Oh, we do. Tuomo. Tuomo, can you answer that question?
Yes, I can. So first of all, Eduardo, I have seen your work on Discord when you are developing the scoreboard. That's great stuff. My tip regarding creating custom templates is that you don't need to re-import when you are making changes to the template. You only will need to re-import when you are making changes to the template definition values within the template. Those are those values which are defining how the user is going to interact with your template. So if you are changing those values, then you will need to re-import. Other than that, if you are making changes to the HTML, say CSS and JavaScript files, all you need to do is save, stop the playout and play, and it will reload the graphic. So no need to re-import.
That's great. Next question.
Matteo in Annecy, France is next, and he says, any advice to eliminate power supply audio interference? I have a Blue Yeti X mix plugged into an ATEM Extreme ISO. If I plug the USB cable of the Yeti into anything connected to power, I get loud interference, but not if using the external USB battery.
Now go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm not a big fan of the audio inputs and outputs on the ATEM. They just seem to be just enough to get by, and they're noisy, and they have issues. The thing you're describing is generally caused by a ground loop or some kind of problem in the power angle. So I would try plugging whatever the device is that's causing the problem into a different outlet in the room, and hopefully a different leg of power that goes back to your box. I don't know how it's set up in France, but it can be a tough thing to track down. By design, it shouldn't do that, what you're describing.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, you're using the Yeti and a lot. I've seen some videos on this, and it really gets me when people start doing this. Basically, what's happening is you're taking the microphone and you're using the headphone jack, and you're bringing that into the ATEM MIDI, and then you're using the USB to just power the microphone instead of plugging it into a computer and using it like it's supposed to be. At least that's the way I'm reading this question. And if you're doing it that way, that's the best way to do is plug it directly into a computer. Don't plug it into a brick or definitely don't plug it into the ATEM Mini, because that's not what it's designed to do right there. And you'll definitely get interference. The best way is to get a regular microphone that does have a 3.5 millimeter connection that will plug into your ATEM Mini properly.
And now I think that the ATEM, the Yeti X does have XLR out. Is that correct? I mean, I think that it's...
No, it's a USB microphone.
Well, I believe it's a USB that also has... I believe that the Yeti at that price point, I believe, has both outputs here. And I'm just trying to find it really quickly. Unless they've changed that, I believe that it's there. I think that you're right that they, yeah, maybe not. There's the Yeti.
You have the older Yeti Pros, which are XLR, but they're only XLR based, and then you have the USB based. There is never a hybrid one.
The Yetis always had USB. The question was really whether they had XLR output. And so that was and again, that was, yeah, it's interesting. I don't see it with this Yeti X. I know that the Yeti Pros all had XLR and USB, so you could plug them into USB, but it also had an XLR that you could use. If that is the case, if there's an XLR on the bottom, and I just can't find it here. This is a horrible website. Yeah, let me see. Just checking here. Yeah, it doesn't look like it does, which is interesting. Again,
you're not confusing the Shure with that. This is Shure S.
No. The Yeti Pros all had They all had XLRs on the bottom because I bought a lot of them. So I bought like 50 of them. So I know that they have XLRs on the bottom. So because we always use those as like, this is the way to go to the next thing if you want to. Anyway, so I don't know about the Yeti X. The Pro is the headphone jack is the problem that you have there. You have an unbalanced output to an unbalanced. If you're doing what Jeffrey talked about, that's going to be rife with issues. It may not even be a ground loop. It may be, just voltage into that system going between those two. It could be a ground loop. The way to know that is if you plug everything into the same strip and same power strip. You shouldn't have any noise because you're not using the same ground. The ground loop is if you plug it into two different legs. Two different legs will create that ground loop that you want to avoid. If you plug it into the same power strip, everything into the same power strip, and you're still getting interference, then it's because you're doing that and that output there. And so you want to be careful. I think that if there's an XLR, you want to convert the XLR to the 1/8 inch jack to get it into the mixer. So I just can't find it on the website. There's not enough pictures. All right, next question.
Chris Taylor in Carlsbad, California is up next. He says, I have a 2-monitor setup. Is there a way to use a third HDMI port directly with an ATEM? Would I need an HDMI splitter, a pass-through monitor, or something else?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, you would need some of those things. I kind of do that myself. I like the fact on the ATEM Extreme that I have two outputs, HDMI outputs, and they're both switchable, which makes it very convenient to switch different outputs and inputs and so on. I use a splitter, and then I use a splitter to be the third connection. That's probably the only way you can do it if you're just connecting to the ATEM.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
If you want to do multiple sources to the two monitors, that Mitch has a good solution for that. I use one of these little trip light guys in my teleprompter rig, but the disadvantage, it's just a little wall wart. It does a really good job, and that splits the same output to two monitors, but you're not getting separate signals on there. So if you just want to do the same thing to two things, these work great. If you want to do two different sources on two different monitors, then you're inside the computer or with some kind of a matrix that's a little more complex.
Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama, Pennsylvania says how to, Panama in Panama. I keep seeing triggered. How to effectively contract more clients. Started a production team, but a majority of projects I've run it as a loss. I consider the product provided is good quality.
It's always a tricky problem, of how to find more clients. The way that I've always done it is I kind of think of everything like a tank track, that I figure out something that's making, there's always something in the center that's making money. There's always something that I'm trying to get rid of. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. And there's always some place that I'm going, and the next thing that once this is making money, the next one will come down of the next place I want to go. I never really have a static approach to what I'm doing. But you got to find something that's generating revenue. So whatever that is, when there was a point in time when that was DJing on the weekends. So I DJ'd on the weekends, knowing that was the thing that made the bulk of my money, and it's what kept me with a roof over my head and food in my belly. But then what I really wanted to do was graphics. And so I just did, and then I did whatever I did. I worked for free. I did whatever I needed to do to do that. I figured it out. First got to minimum wage and then got to a little more than minimum wage. But I had something that was going to generate revenue that I could do. And then that's how I got started. I've done the same thing at larger scale, for most of my career, where I'm always doing something where I'm experimenting. I'm not worried about whether it makes money or not. And then I have something else that is generating, the base income, that's there. And so it's just a matter of figuring out what those things, it's a matter of figuring out that calculation, because you do have to have, it is hard if you're constantly not making as much money as you're spending. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, we usually pick one client, usually a nonprofit or an organization, or sometimes even a government agency that needs help. And we donate our time for that, but just one. Yeah. And we do a fantastic job with it, and hope that other people in that line will also see what we do, and then that will bring work to us.
Yeah, oftentimes we'll give people a discount and say, hey, you can't afford me. Like, you can't afford what I'm going to do. And I will give you the discount. I'll do it at the price that you want to do it at. But I get all the PR rights. So I get to use all the behind the scenes. I get to use it in my stuff. And so you can make a deal with them when they can't afford to pay you what you're worth. Because a lot of times with what I work on, I can't almost ever talk about it. So getting the opportunity to be able to talk about it and use it as a way to get it out, that's also a good way to attract more work. Go ahead, Bill.
In my early days, here's what cracked the nut for me originally. First and foremost, you have to both know what you're good at and be able to communicate that successfully. It's kind of a silly but very powerful thing in public speaking that there's a thing called an elevator pitch, which is reducing down and practicing relentlessly a way to explain to people why you could be of value to them, what your service is, what your product, and you have to be able to do it consistently and powerfully. Once you get that, the second rule for me has always been companies don't hire people, people hire people. And you never know who's going to have an in to the companies who are looking for people. So you have to relentlessly start a little tiny bit of self-promotion, which is to search out people wherever they are. If they're on your son or daughter's softball team, or if they're somebody who you buy sandwiches from down the street, doesn't matter. Learn to use that little elevator pitch to help people understand what you do. And if you do that powerfully enough, sometimes they will tell somebody, they'll have a friend. You just want to get your message out to as many people, but that message needs to be well crafted to make you seem valuable.
And we're going to jump to the next question. I think we were a little over time on that one. Next question.
Idris Haggy in Fairfax, Virginia. What are your thoughts on ceiling mics for medium classroom sizes, 8 people or so? Are they good design for a classroom given how far they are from the source of the audio?
I never like the way they sound. The two companies I think that do the best job at making this work is Shure and Sennheiser. They have a variety of arrays, the Microflex systems and other systems that Shure makes, and Sennheiser makes also some good ones. I can't say that I like them, but if you're going to do that, those are probably the best of the bunch. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, up next. He says, I want to improve the lower third for how on Zoom meetings. No budget. Any suggestions? And OBS is not an option.
I mean, a lot of that is design. So I don't think you have to get too over the top. I mean, you can, if you have an ATEM switcher, you can definitely put stills in. If you want to do things that are more animated, like what we have, I would look at SPX. If you're not doing that, I think that it's a great. It's turned out to be really great for what we're doing. So, and the good news is we have a developer that's in the family. so you know that you can get better support than you'll get almost anywhere else. So I would take a look at that. Next question.
Speaking of that, Alex40 Golner says, for those who use SPX GC when implementing designs, do folks use interactive design tools, the equivalent of Adobe Illustrator or After Effects? And if so, which tools and how flexible are they?
Tuomo?
Yeah, that's a big question. So first of all, it all depends on your skill level with HTML and CSS. So most of the people at the moment, they are using existing templates as a starting point, and then they just modify those. However, there are different techniques what you can use when doing HTML-based graphics. Those are just traditional DOM elements. There are CSS animations, JavaScript-based libraries, and so on. There are a couple of tools which are quite interesting. I would say the most interesting one is an application, a web app called Loopik.io. That is a sort of like a tiny After Effects for HTML graphics. And it is done originally for CASTR CG graphics using HTML. But those templates, what you can create with Loopik, can be saved as an HTML template and can be integrated into SPX. So that is one option.
Go ahead, Alex.
You're muted, Al.
Can't hear you, Alex.
I muted myself, and I'll be very quick. I was just hoping to use a graphics program that can generate HTML. I don't really want to ever touch CSS, but I guess I'll probably have to.
Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, is up next with, can I show my Vegas space badges for tonight's conversations with Tony Mobley?
Go ahead, Tony.
So these are my badges.
Very good. Yeah, you should.
And I just want to say that on March 19th, there is a major event that's going to be taking place. And there's a gentleman who is behind this magnificent event that's taking place, where all of these office hour members and people of the community are embracing this epic adventure. And I just want you to know that I am going to have a great conversation with that gentleman tonight on Conversations with Tony Mobley. And I encourage you to be there to ask questions. And we're going to find out what were the things that inspired this great man to be in the position to create this great event, and also how he was a great businessman.
Good, John.
Thank you, Tony. Sure, absolutely show those, and I look forward to tonight's show. And I'm just honored that the community came together. Wasn't anything. I was just launching a little rocket, and Fenwick and Keenan went crazy, and so I'm honored to have the team and the community come together for this event. Thank you.
Little is taller than I am.
It's quite a snowball. All right, next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says, Restream Studio seems like an really easy low-barrier cloud switching solution. In recommending solutions like this, what's the best way to test the client-side bandwidth usage?
The one that we use the most is actually speedtest.net. So that's the most common one. It is... speedtest.net is a bit conservative, so it's usually you have better bandwidth than what it tells you have, which is the way we like it to run. So it's not, and it's the easiest one. And also we can tell them just run it, and it'll create a link. They can just send it back or put it into a Q&A or whatever, or like a form with that link that we can go see it and get the data. They don't have to type anything in. So we find that one to be the easiest. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says, since the iOS Zoom Room controller app can now be a Zoom Room itself, no computer needed, how long do you think before they enable NDI out?
I think that eventually NDI is going to be available on everything that Zoom does, but we'll have to see how that works. All right, we are changing subjects. Now we're going to be talking about the graphics in 2.0 now, and we know that it's all a work in progress. So we're going to keep on doing this every once in a while, probably about once a month. We'll kind of talk about our graphics and talk about our workflow and see where we are on it. First of all, before we get into it, I just want to say that I think that the team has done a great job so far. I think a lot of stuff looks really good. Obviously, little sharp edges here and there, but we're really taking a lot of ground. So this is really, really well done by the team. And since no one's really lifting anything for discussion yet, we'll just jump into the questions and we'll start answering them in line. So let's go ahead to the first question.
Mike Emmett in Melbourne, Australia is up first. He says a style guide is in the early stages of compilation with current focus on getting consistency in the basics and describing the design for future iteration. What would people like to see included in a style guide so iteration can be seamless?
I think that for me, I would like to, we probably ought to start thinking about colors, like getting the colors. I think the blues that are working pretty well right now, kind of the icy blue. I think that for instance, our super source background is purplish. So we probably need to pull that into line as far as that goes, but we're probably going to redesign that anyway. So I think that, but I think that thinking about colors, so what are the lookup colors that we're thinking about there. So I think that's one thing to think about. Obviously fonts, basics of this is what the lower thirds look like. This is what the questions look like. So we have to build the groupings of the type of graphics. But it would start with, in my opinion, color, loco usage, and fonts are the first thing you figure out. And then we start branching out from there and how transparency used, how edges are used. Those are the other things that I would think about. Go ahead, Bill.
So I'm going to bring up the religious topic, which is in the style guide, are we going to allow for vertical video?
No, because that's not what we do. so like there's not going to be any, we're not going to stream vertically anytime soon. So it's, yeah, so. But
like on phones and things like that, so it's always going to,
It's impossible for us to do that with the super source. Like I'm maybe somewhere in the future we'll think about it, but we have to, I guess it's not impossible, but what I will say is that we will master 16:9 first. Like one of the things that can be devastating to projects is trying to make them something for everything, and giving them too many variables and too many outcomes. And there's no way we can do this. I mean, there is a way to do vertical, but it means we're doing a different switch and a different graphics layout and a different piece. And we don't even have the first one working yet. So we're definitely not adding more complexity while we're doing it, especially given the fact that I just don't think I don't know if it's really a long form viewing behavior. Go ahead, Alex.
So vertical video, that's a no, certainly for now. Are there any definite don'ts? And that would be useful, obviously, for example, the office hours logo. It seems to be made of 1 or 2 or 3 parts. Are they always locked together? A few other little things like that from you would be useful, maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't break the logo up. I wouldn't use anything that we haven't fully approved. I wouldn't, I would just stick with what we have, with what it looks like right now. We want to definitely. I have to admit that I just come out of corporate, and so I'm super sensitive to logos. So things, we just have to kind of go through a decision process around them and not experiment with them until we do that. And we can experiment with them behind the scenes, but not put them into the show. I think Chris is actually pretty close to a 3D logo that we can use for that. So I think that we should. I think we'll figure out and have him just do something to finish it up. I mean, it's very, very close. So I think that he and I have been going back and forth on that. So I think that 3D logo will make sense. But I think we have to go through a lot of process for that to go from there.
Do you think there should be an alternate 2D logo for uses when that works, or should it always be that 3D logo once it's been signed off?
No, we can just use it when we want to. I'm happy with the 2D logo that we have now. Like I think the 2D logo is just fine. So we can play with small iterations, but I don't need it to be 3D, to do that. So I guess I would say that one's kind of a fun one to use for countdown clocks and things and ends and stuff like that. During graphics, I think that oftentimes it can get a little, and we may play with it as we go through that. I mean, again, one thing that's going to be different from what we do versus what most people do is that we're going to iterate a lot. We're going to go, oh, we like this and we don't like that, and we do, the one thing that for me, if we get to, these are the logos that we're going to use, this is the font we're going to use, this is the colors we're going to use, and some basic, guidelines on lines and stuff like that. We can experiment a lot within those things. Those things I think we just try to get to as fast as we can, because that creates a unified show.
So, and I suppose also a lockup, which is typography associated with the logo. The words office hours or any other text around it will be a good thing in terms of safe areas and stuff around for text and variations on themes. Maybe. Yeah. And I think that, we need to work on the lockup a little bit, because I don't think the text totally works with what we're doing right now. So I think that is something that we have to kind of think through there. Go ahead, Bill.
We're 99% screen-based here, but are we going to, in the style guide, do things for print and all the traditional style guide things? I mean, I've been dealing with corporate style guides for 20 years, and it's amazing how much detail they go into about which part of the quadrant of a screen you can allow the logo to sit in and what size it needs to be and so forth. So what are the first, I guess what I'm asking really is, what are the first things? It's screen for the show, and then everything else subsidiary to that, and anybody can use it on print however they like.
Well, we just won't use print. We'll figure it out. We're not going to build any style guides towards print, because we're going to build very little that goes on paper. That's a legacy format. So we want to think about how we use them on screens a lot. If we have to break down and put them on paper, we'll have a meeting about that. But I don't think that, I think that that's a legacy platform. Go ahead, Tuomo.
Actually, I do have a question regarding the content of the style guide. So going forward, I'm sure there's going to be even more sort of like sub-brands or projects within office hours. So should we have something regarding that how can these sub-brands or sub-projects, spin-offs use the brand?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is that I think that we need to focus on getting the style guide just for this show done first. So I would, I tend to be very linear in that way that I think that we still have some rough edges to kind of work out within the graphics. And so I probably wouldn't start adding other things that we're trying to figure out until we get that one really to where we're happy. Go ahead, Alex.
Can you make a distinction between the show and the general organization around it, and the difference between the website? Is it the show, or is it separate, or what is the?
Well, we should definitely tie them together so that the look and feel is the same. So we have to, figure out how to get the website to, we'll figure out ways that we're going to adjust the website so that it feels like the show. I mean, we definitely want both of those to be lined up, to each other. So the website pre-existed, and Ken's done a great job. And now as we start working on the graphics of the show, we just need to find ways to tie what he's doing into what we're doing, and I don't think there are major changes to get that to work. You were going to say something else, Alex?
I suppose, and one other element is textures or patterns or colors, because obviously we do have an established color or a background color, maybe, or we will establish one. Also, sometimes brands have an associated texture or pattern. Obviously, there is that kind of in the background of the super source, there is that grid in terms of a box grid with dots in the middle, but also lines creeping across it. But it's more about a few other extra elements that might be useful in general.
I think we should brainstorm on that. Absolutely. So I think that, and figure out what we want to do there. I'm definitely not committed to it. I know that the dots and the lines were my idea, but as I saw them in the show, I'm like, I don't know if it'll work. So I think that my own ideas there, evolved after seeing it. So I think that, we'll need to, play with those things. But I think that, again, the super source background, we can experiment with. I think countdown clocks, I just threw one together. So that was like an hour of work. So I think that we can continue to, I envision certain parts of what we do to be very experimental, like the countdown clocks, some kind of closing credits, even the super source to some degree. I think we can experiment with a lot too, because, as we move to HDR, we also want to use backgrounds and details that take advantage of that bandwidth, or take advantage of the color space. And the same thing will happen in audio design as we get 5.1.
And also, how about on-screen bugs, channel branding in terms of when things appear in different places when there isn't a lower third? Or do you want to keep everything clean in general? Or do you want to design something so it looks good when it's in the corner of the screen or wherever you want to put it?
Yeah, I think having a bug would be great. I think that the Office, like in the super source right now, we don't really have that. And I think it'd be great to have like a bug in the upper corner or something like that for the super source. So that, I think that would be great. Next question.
Mike Emmett from Melbourne, Australia is up next. He says, is there an explicit brief for the design of Office Hours 2.0 graphics?
No, we're figuring it out. It's what's loosely we refer to as agile design. So we're throwing things together and seeing how they look, and we'll probably continue to do that. I expect the next 2 months, maybe 3 months, to be relatively, lots of change and us figuring it out. Whatever we do, it's better than 1.0. What I will say is that I'm super happy with where we've gone so far in the last couple of days. When I look back on them, we've got some audio sync issues, and there's a couple of things with the lower thirds that, aren't displaying correctly. And there's a couple little bits in here, and the, super source background needs to be redesigned, and so on and so forth. But overall, it looks way better than what we've done in the past. And I think that we're going down the right path. Next question.
Mike Emmett from Melbourne, Australia starts with the comment, design by committee is almost always disastrous. In our studio, our creative director insists that every job has a chain of decision making, regardless of how collaborative the process is. How can we do this with Office Hours?
I think that we'll see how it goes. I think that we are, I do think it's a little bit more collaborative because we're trying to figure out some pieces there. I think in the end, I probably have an outsized decision in how it works, but I'm very open to listening to everybody and figuring out what they want to do. I know that the current lower thirds and question platform stuff has been done largely without me, and it's worked out really well. So I think that I think we'll kind of keep on collaborating, because I think that part of it is that it more than just an event. It's an exploration in how we want to do this and how we want to make it work and how we want it to react. And so I'm a little less worried about it being top down and more worried about it just us learning and figuring out what makes sense. Go ahead, Tuomo.
I was just thinking maybe we could use the guidelines somehow to aid us in that. So we would have drafts in the guidelines. We could comment on those. And one thing what I would like to ask for is some kind of a testing platform, so where we can meet up and do test runs and try out things and change colors and whatnot in real time. Because when it comes to the real time graphics, then we can always just change the fonts, we can change the sizes and colors and whatnot in real time, and we can see those in context. So that would be very useful tool to have in our pipeline.
Yeah, and I think that we can definitely schedule time, like, hey, we're going to test it at this time in after hours, and I think that we could do that, and even set up if it's easier, set up a breakout room in after hours. The main thing for me is just scheduling the time, just scheduling. I'm sure people will show up, and the times best to do it are probably right after or right before office hours happens. That seems to be when we have the largest number of people in after hours. So, setting something up where everyone can jump in and look at it and so on and so forth, I think is great. So, thinking about those kind of brainstorming meetings, I think it would make sense to possibly do it once a week, where we do that, or twice a week, or I don't know, every day if you want. I mean, it just depends on what people want to do. I also think that we should use the weekends, especially Sunday when we're not broadcasting, to use that as Sunday's a great kind of, we're not going to stream it, but we can see it, like just put it back into program, here in the show, so that we can all look at it. But I think you could do kind of brainstorming during the week, once or twice or 3 times a week, whatever you want to do. But then the live, like, hey, we're going to see how this is working, can just be another window inside of Sunday. And we just run it with the show. And then that's going to give us a really good idea of, how it's working. So I think that could work well. Next question.
Courtney Gooden in Hollywood says, have you considered that when using the Office Hours logo full screen, the play icon in the middle is deceiving? When it comes up in a YouTube embedded window in Mukana, it leads people to click on it, taking them out to YouTube.
YouTube embedded window in Mukana. I don't know why it would take people out to YouTube. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I just note this is on another thing. I was at a website, and in their logo, they had used the right-pointing triangle that often indicates play. And I found myself knee-jerk clicking on it, and it took me a minute to realize that it wasn't an active link. It was just a design mistake that I believe they had made in using that element in there. So I think this is maybe getting towards something like that, a play icon that causes people to take an action that's not connected to anything.
I have to think about that. It'd be interesting to see what the logo looks like when we turn it 90 degrees. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know if it's really that. I mean, I'm not confused by it, but I've been using some version of that kind of thing for a long time, so I don't think about it that way. But I could see that being a problem. I don't have a strong opinion yet. So that's a good point. We'll have to think about it. Next question.
Chris Taylor, Carlsbad, California. Up next, he says Office Hours 2.0 lower third font and layout is nice, but in my opinion, the teal full-width quick splash bar is distracting, and the full-width black bar behind each name would seem subtler if just the length of the name and location, if it, I guess, matched that. Thoughts?
I have to admit, I kind of like the strip going all the way across, but I do find that when it appears after the first time, I would prefer it just to kind of like come across and just be more subtle. That's kind of my thought process in that. Go ahead, Alex. I can't hear you.
Could you bear having a little bit more information on the bar, such as on the other end of it, than maybe the topic or something like that? Or do you want it to be not have any more information on the bar?
I don't need to have any more information. Like I don't need to clutter it up. I like the black bar going all across. I like the highlight on the side. I think the thing that I do find to be a little too much when it does it a lot is the kind of the transition to it. I think I was thinking about it the other day, looking at it, and it would almost be kind of cool to have just that little dot up here, or the little piece on the frame left or whatever, and then have it just string out like this all the way across the screen, with the, and have it go in. But because I think that the rollover with the teal is a little much when we do it over and over again. Go ahead, Tuomo.
Yeah, so the teal color was meant to be there, like we just saw the flash here. The original idea was that it will only be shown once, and then we will see this bar. And the reason why the bar is full screen width is the fact that it can be quite distracting if it just scales down and up, depending on the length of the speaker or the name of the speaker, and then when it animates up to reveal the question. So it will be also, I think it could be quite distracting if it moves into two directions. So in the width-wise and in the height-wise. So that's why it is full width at the moment. But yeah, those are things which are exactly those things which would be very easy to test and figure out.
Yeah, I think that having that the big transition, I think that I like the rest of it, and it doesn't bother me for it to go across. But I think that but what I would do is there's that larger transition that's brighter at the beginning that I find a little bit more distracting. Go ahead, Alex.
I suppose it's coming up with the visual language of saying in the brand guidelines, tiny vertical bright colors. Sometimes things come out of them and sometimes they go back into them. And then sometimes those little vertical lines move somewhere else before they're about to extrude something. So then what's happening is that it's more, does the extrusion of a bar that's dark and then text appearing in that, is that less distracting? Once a little line has moved somewhere else, is that less distracting than the whole bar itself moving up? So this is something we can explore. But then we've got a kind of motion graphics language part of it, in which does the light the vertical thing blink just once and then goes, and then something slide out and then come back again if it's about to move somewhere and then move somewhere else.
Well, and a good example here is like this is a place where, I mean, my preference would be to have, I do like it when it's just switching between us, although for some reason I have a tendency to want to have the vertical bar just slide across with a new name as opposed to it going, like rolling vertically. Just have that little thing go across and give us a new name. I think that the thing that I'd love in the super sources, of course, is to, and I know that we've been struggling with this, but to put the lower thirds into the super source graphics, so that we, like this is a good example. We're now in a super source, and if the graphic comes up, it's going to be one of us, not both of us. So, so having that go across would be, having it be, because it's also a little bit of a show off. I have to admit that if we can get it working with the super sources, it's a little bit of a flex, because I can tell you from a graphics perspective, that's really hard. Like to do it, it's really hard to do over and over and over again dynamically with new people all the time. That's an expensive production, thing that is fun to show off. If we're able to do that, that's a hard thing to do. Yeah, Alex.
I suppose if we've got lots of people and we've got not that many people, too many people on the screen at once, do we have a more minimal version of the lower third that just has the person? Because where I'm from is now, maybe that's already been established, and maybe just my name is fine, or maybe just my first name even, or just my surname or something like that. It's more of when we've got a mini up, it's just to allow for what can be dropped.
I think you could drop. I think it could just be the name. I think it could just be the name that's in the super sources there. But I think that it would, if it's doable, that would be a fun thing. Go ahead, Tuomo.
So the template for that has been done already. But I don't know the reason why it hasn't been implemented. It would be interesting to hear why not.
I don't know if we have the right people here to answer that question, but yeah, it'd be great. So I think that I know that it came up in some of our tests and it wasn't working. Something wasn't working on our end. It wasn't necessarily the template. So we'll have to take a look at why that isn't the case there. So we'll, be interesting to deal with. But I do think that we should try to figure that out, because it will definitely, again, in the world of trying to show off a little bit, that's a show off for me anyway, because I know I've had to do it for whole shows where we've changed them all the time, and it was brutal. No, let's go to the next question.
Alex is right back. Alex Gollner. When making graphics for ATEM switchers, are we still limited to Targa? But now can we have straight as well as pre-multiplied?
So it has to be pre-multiplied, and it has to do the reason for that is that the way that it works the way the ATEM works is they saved a cycle. It took me a long time to figure out what they were doing. This isn't from Blackmagic. This is just me doing testing things until I figured it out. So what's happening is when you have a graphic, when you have an alpha channel, you have to punch. You basically have your background layer, and you punch a hole in that graphic. You basically multiply. That's what's pre-multiply. You multiply this alpha channel to the background graphic, and that punches a hole in it. You then, what typically happens with a composite is you're supposed to then, this is why straight alpha works, is that what you're supposed to do then is take that same graphic that's there, invert it, and punch the foreground. right? So that the foreground has the graphic and this is all black, right? And then you add these two together. Like that's the math. It's multiplying. It's not very complicated math. What Blackmagic did, I'm sure to save money on building the device, is they take the alpha channel and they punch out the background and then they just add this on top. They just add it on top. So if you don't pre-multiply it, you have white or something else, or in the case of straight alphas, you have the rough edge because it's not getting cut out. And so when they add it on top, you just get this rough edge that goes across. And that's also why pings sometimes have trouble. So so you can't, you have to, the Targa is the right one to use for that. I think TIFF might work, but Targa is a lot lighter. But there's no way that I know of with that you have to, I believe, still have to use that because of the way it's calculating it. Go ahead, Alex.
So from a workflow perspective, I know this is not a design thing, but it's just while we're here. I tried Adobe Media Composer and Adobe Media Encoder, I should say, and Compressor. And when producing TGA sequences, they don't seem to have any control over the alpha pre-multiplication. So the answer is use After Effects, because that can take a ProRes 44444 file and make a TGA with pre-multiplied. Is that the way of getting TGA sequences from animations?
Yes. Yeah. So the compressor, After Effects is the right thing to use right now to do that. You could theoretically batch it. So Affinity Photo will export, if you're doing stills, Affinity Photo will export TGA files with the proper alpha channel, with the pre-multiplied alpha channel. I don't know where they got the idea to do that, but anyway, so Affinity will do it, because and that the argument there was it was worth it for them to do because we needed something that wasn't Photoshop to export that out, and so they were kind enough to add that, and so it's a relatively inexpensive app that can bump out TGA files. After Effects is the only other one that I know of that does the sequences correctly. You go through Compressor, you can go out of Motion into Compressor and export a TGA, and it no longer, with the newest version, no longer has the problem that it was doing compressed TGAs. It's now doing uncompressed. It's doing the proper TGAs, except that it's straight alpha. So that is the problem. So you could still do it out of Motion, but you'd have to open it up. I don't know how to do it any other way. So yeah, that's why. Literally, that is the number one reason I have After Effects still, is to convert to TGA sequences. So anyway, not that I'm bitter. Next question.
Tim Holmes in San Lorenzo asks, could you show the basic graphics to us? For example, the lower thirds, the questions, the logos, and so forth.
Yeah, I don't know. The guys should be able to show some of them. You saw the question there. There's the question. The question, by the way, I think that we need to figure out a better use of that real estate. I still feel like that question bar is really tall. Like it is problematically tall all the time. I think that we use up a lot of white space for the name. I think that I would stack that a little bit because I know that it'll feel denser, and I like the use of that, but I feel like it's always cutting our chin off, even when we're properly framed. So I think we need to figure out a way to. I think that if we move that name and location to the upper left corner and allow the text to go all the way across, we would more effectively be able to drop a line or two. We just need to drop like one or two lines of that down, so that it's not that piece isn't coming up quite so high, but it cuts off everybody's chin. So it's always just a little too big, for that. So now the other option would be for us to build a slide in the middle. Like we could get rid of the question piece there or only use it for super sources. And then we could have a slide in the middle that when we go next question, we get a full frame, some kind of sweeper that opens up, shows that whole question, and then turns off. And then we never use it over a person. So that we could leave it the way it is if we just decided we're never going to use that question graphic over a full frame person, which that might be the way to do it. So I'm open to that. I don't think it works over singles, for that. And then I guess we showed the lower third before. I don't know if someone can fire up the lower third there to show that there, but I'm not sure how fast the system can do that. I'm going to keep on talking and see if someone pops up a lower third in the back end. Maybe not. So anyway, why are we having trouble with that? I'm actually kind of curious about why we're having trouble with the lower third to not be able to just fire it up. Is it broken? It seems to be working the whole time.
I'll speak for a moment and see if it'll pull to me. And there we go. There is a lower
is
third.
It automatic? Is it just that it goes away and then it? I don't know whether that's an automatic fire or not. So we'll have to figure that out. Anyway, there's your basic lower. Require someone. Okay, that's interesting. We'll have to figure that out. So it because it's dynamic, it requires someone else to speak because it's there. It's designed to be there for a certain amount of time, which makes sense. One of the things that we're trying to figure out with the graphics and with what we're doing here is we want it to be able to scale up to a large number of people being able to do it, but we also want it to be able to scale down to 1 or 2 people running an event, where it could run automatically. So some of these processes are automatic so that we can figure out how to do that, because we want to make sure that eventually the look that we've created is something that, even a small producer could put together. Go ahead, Alex.
This is more a kind of show flow thing and also a different department. But do you think it would be a good idea when people submit a question, they can either add a 1 or 2 word topic, or maybe pick from a list of 100 topics, and then that topic can be included in the lower third, and there's no need to bring the question back, because really what we're doing is the question is prompting a topic conversation.
I think that if we did that, we would probably have the producers on the back end or the team on the back end summarize that into something, like look at the question and go audio into the ATEM or and that would take a person to do that. I don't think I would have the producers that are writing it do it, just because I think that there'd be a lot of variance, in how that worked. I think someone figuring that out would make more sense. Let's go to the next question.
Kate Hastings in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania said, Selinsgrove, I'm sorry. You seem to be using U.S. Post Office state name abbreviations in office hours chirons. Is it easy for international viewers to parse, for example, MEMI, MN, MS, and so forth?
Go ahead, Tuomo. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you there.
Sorry. So this question seems to be coming up quite a bit. So the way it works is that when we are receiving a question, we are extracting the last 2 or 3 characters from the location, and we are doing a lookup to find a flag for that location. And that is the reason why there should be, like in this question, we had the Panama flag, even though it was PA USA. so it was coming from the system thought that the question is coming from Panama because there was PA, and the list of country codes is a standard. It's an ISO, what is it called? ISO 3166 international standard alpha 2. So 2-character country codes. So that is something what we should have at the end of everybody's location, so then it would work correctly. But I agree. So for me, as a European person, I have no clue what these US states are abbreviated like that.
Yeah. So I think that what we should do is probably inside of Mukana give people the opportunity to say what country they're in, and then have that in the metadata as opposed to them typing it in. I don't know how we have that set up now, but we should put that request out to Chris. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, because that's going to be a direct conflict, because in the U.S., the state codes are 2 digits, and I can see there's going to eventually be overlaps like we had with PA, Pennsylvania, and Panama, and it's just an inherent conflict.
Yeah, I think that. So I think that what we'll do is we'll look at a way for people to pick their location for that. Yeah, that would make sense. Next question.
Alex Gollner in London in the UK, right back again with, how does the graphic design process interact with the show flow design process? Is changing the beats in the first hour and second hour likely?
And what beats are you talking about, Alex?
I'm talking about host, question answerer, first person answering, second person answering, then back to host saying question, next question, please. In other words, are those things likely to change for, I don't expect them for the first hour, but if we do come up with more flexible ways of doing second hours, does that require a different way of looking at some of those graphics and lower thirds and stuff like that?
What do you mean by more flexible ways of doing second hour?
Well, let's say that you would, because essentially what we have is this kind of this flow chart that's relatively simple that Isadora is kind of effectively implementing and firing off the graphics to do. Mm-hmm. But if we do have banter mode, or we do have a panel mode, so we essentially have slightly different. So a second hour may start off with introduction section, which will require certain lower thirds and lower graphics. Mm-hmm. Then would have essentially 10 minutes of prepared statement, but that of course is in the film with maybe some graphics, and actually that person having a separate source for their graphics and them appearing on the screen at the same time, maybe. And then after that, general banter stuff, and then after that Q&A. So it's just. Are we talking about Office Hours 2.1 for this, or are we likely to need graphics and stuff for that soon?
I think that's 2.1. Probably. I think I would definitely take what we're doing right now and try to make it look to the point where we go, that feels like, my goal in the next 2 months is to get to a point that by May 1, we feel like if this show showed up on CNN, people wouldn't flinch. We're not quite there yet. But the idea is that, although I did notice that our graphic looks remarkably like one of the CNN shows. I was looking at Christine Amanpour, and I was like, that graphic looks very similar. I was like, how did they get our graphic? Anyway, but my goal is that if you're watching CNN or you're watching something else and our show just happened to be programmed into the next one, that it wouldn't look any different from the shows that you're watching there. And so I think that we want to stabilize that first. And I'm always going to be about a stable, solid solution, and then we'll keep going. Then we'll keep on adding, bits and pieces to that process. One thing I would like to put in is that it's super important that we go to black at the top of the hour. So the countdown clock should not sweep to me. I don't care about the sweeper. I mean, the sweeper's great. I think it looks nice, but I think that we need to go out of the. I think the way to do this would be, we need to go out of the countdown clock to black and then run the sweeper and then come to me. The black is super important. Black and mics down for 1 second or half a second is just really, really important, because when eventually we want to clip files, wow, does that make a difference? Like, I'm just telling you that it's like life-changing. To just go to black for a second. Like, it just bounced to black so that I have one frame to cut to when I'm, that means that every time we want to trim the countdown, which should be every day, when you want to trim the countdown clock, it trims perfectly. When we come out of a countdown clock straight into a sweeper, straight into me, it just makes the edit process a lot more complicated. So there's a reason that you'll see this in TV shows all the time. Like live stuff all the time. They'll come out of the top of the hour, or when they go to a commercial break and come out of the commercial break, it's going to black just for a beat, because that's those are the inserts. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, in terms of that kind of timing, it's been something that I've been trying to figure out on my end as the reader often. I believe in Alex's original idea to me, which was that it's more like radio. So I've been trying to make sure that every transition is in the flow and tempo, and literally often I will have the first line of the question out before the graphics trigger to change. I don't think slowing down, and I tried a couple of little techniques, and Alex said, no, don't do that, in terms of our next question comes for really to give time for the graphics to cycle. And it's only occasionally that we get into that problem where Alex suddenly realizes there's something to do, has already said next question, and then goes back. And I've done it myself, and I've seen Liberty do it. You're trying to find the flow so that the information keeps flowing to the audience to take care of them first and foremost, and everything in the back end has to be subservient to kind of that. It's hard.
Yeah, and I think that as hosts, I've now gotten a little away from that, where if I say next question, I don't go back. Like, I just go, well, we lost that. We lost that, like someone should have put their hand up earlier. Like, I think I've kind of switched to, like, if I go to the next question, I didn't see it. I've done it a couple times. I think I did it once or twice today, where I just don't see I don't see somebody else because it came in late. And the way I have my screens oriented, I just don't, like I don't see it. So because I'm using my memory a lot as a host, so I look over and I decide, oh, I've got this person, this person, this person, this person, and then I go. And so so I think that is a piece of that puzzle. But I think the transition through black, like when we get to the point where if we want to clip all of the questions, having it transition to black could be really useful. When I say next question, it goes woo, like it just ducks to black and comes to Bill asking the next question. Could be a really interesting way to easily clip all of these things out, because it would give you a hard point. And I don't know whether that would work or not. It'd be something we might want to think about. I will say that for the back end, we can talk about this more on Friday, moving the questions up is super important. Like it's really hard for the question asker. When I noticed this on Sunday, if the question, whoever's managing the questions isn't moving fast enough, it's really hard for the reader, because eventually it's going to move halfway through their read. And so that's problematic. And so we either have to make that work perfectly, or the question reader has to have that control back again, because that's been one of the hardest things in our system right now is that the questions are coming, the question gets moved after I start reading it, and that because I can't wait for it to do it, because I don't, so that's a more complicated problem. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. He says, what's the little rectangle on the lower left side of the screen all about?
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, there's two answers to that question, and it's the two designer answers. One is like, that's just the way I felt at the time, which whoever came up with it just said, yeah, why not that? And the other one is a kind of reverse engineered way of justifying it, which is obviously rubbish as well. But a way of justifying it is to say, this is a thing to get your attention, and it's a thing that where content is coming from, and it's a little highlight that we can add to something very easily. Right. Lots of other things that have that little highlight on it to show that means office hours. It's very simple.
And I think it might be two different things, because the little dot that you see all the time in Zoom is a result of there's no name in it. Like we had to put 0 characters into the name. That isn't showing up on YouTube. So our graphics that are there aren't. There's a little semi-transparent block in the lower corner that sits over top of what we're doing, and that's just because Zoom doesn't let us get rid of the name all of it. So we have to go to something. So that's why that's there, because there's just no characters. We're not worried about it too much, and we're not managing it because we're probably going to do what we're doing here for another week. So end of next week, we're going to turn off the webinar altogether. And once we get to that, we will, then we won't have to worry about that dot. So we're not trying to fix it just because it's just an aberration based on the fact that we decided to make it easy. We wanted to change everything. And admittedly, I wanted the backup to be able to drop to 1.0 easily if 2.0 wasn't working. I'm going to go through one more week of that, and then we will get rid of the webinar. So, and then it'll just be YouTube. And so that'll be a different experience, but we won't have that problem with that little dot that we have right now. Next question.
Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada says, is it reasonable to ask for a super source framing for when somebody is sharing images in their answer?
Well, I think that the panelists really need to pay attention to the Fenwick frame. Some folks are still a little too close to the camera. It really has to, your head really has to fit into that, because otherwise it doesn't look good in the super source. So if that's what you're referring to, Dave, yeah, I think the panelists have to pay a lot of attention. One of the reasons we feed the system back into the panel meeting is so that they can see it. And they need to really, you'll see me do this thing where I go like this, like I'll move over because I see myself in the super source, and I see myself in the super source, and you'll see me just adjust a little bit to fit my head into where I think to center it. So panelists definitely need to be, and my goal right now, we're having some kind of permissions error with Zoom. So we haven't gotten, our first step is to get panelist view into Zoom. Our second step is to the panelist view so that you don't have two windows open. The second thing to do is to get, a couple other things, but one of the main things after that is to get the framing comp. I'm trying to figure out, I don't think we have the tools yet to do this, but I eventually want the Fenwick frame to be something that that someone can turn on as a panelist on their own feed, not going out to us, inside of Zoom. So that frames up all the time, like it just goes up, and then they can always see themselves in reference to that frame, so that we can keep, because it's going to be more and more important that we keep our heads the same size because of the super source, because that never happens in broadcast, because there's a camera operator always changing that to make sure that you stay framed properly. You don't get a choice. And so right now, some folks are a little too close to their camera or a little low in shot, and we need to keep correcting for that. Next question.
Next one comes from George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Regarding the question graphic, would it help to change from a lower third to a lower quarter?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the more I think about it as we talk through it, I do think that a full frame when it's asked and then only over the super source would solve the problem without changing the design. Go ahead. So it could be just a flow process. Go ahead, Tuomo.
Well, yeah, the actual question here is how much do we want to show content at once? Mm-hmm. So that is where we need to start from, and so we can always make the font smaller, but then there is an issue of can people still read it? And there's one approach what we can do, and I'm going to just throw a graphic into my feed here, which is going to scroll this little text underneath here, so it's going to scroll to reveal the last part of it. So this kind of approach could be done to the lower third as well. So we will have, let's say, 2 or 3 lines space for 2 or 3 lines. Then we will show the first 2 lines, and if it doesn't fit in there, then we can scroll it up to reveal the rest of the text. So that is one approach what we can do.
I have to admit that moving text, and this is a personal thing, so we can all keep discussing it, but I know that moving text makes me very upset. So like things move, like things rolling. Like I don't even like tickers. I won't watch shows that have lots of things that are moving because it just creates it's a stress point for me when I'm as a viewer. And so I'm open to people doing it if they really want to, but I would probably prefer not to do that all the time. It would aggravate. I know for me, it would aggravate me. And my goal is to make it very subtle, and serve the thing. I think that if we found a full frame graphic that opened up when Bill's reading the question, that here's the question, and even I think it'd be really fun to have even take people's profile pictures, give them a place to upload it into Makana so that it pops up. There's a picture of them. There's their name. There's their thing. I'd rather make it a big thing of a full frame graphic when he asks the question, and then goes to and then in the super source, we bring that third up, but we basically never bring I'm fine with the graphic the way it is. The more I've thought about it, just never over top of a person talking. It just needs to be, just not ever go to that level. Or we do exactly what Alex was talking about earlier, which is a summary that someone types in for those questions. Someone just goes through those questions and adds a summary line that goes into it that is the other lower third when a person's talking that doesn't do the whole read. Go ahead, Alex.
No, I know that Bill Davis is lovely to look at, but does the question answer need to be on the screen when the question is being asked?
No, that's what I'm saying. You don't.
He's the Hank Kingsley essentially kind of thing situation.
No, yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's a full frame, just fill up the frame with the question, and we see that in broadcast all the time. So a cool design, kind of like our sweeper that opens up, and it just it dynamically puts that question in when it's being read. I think is great. I think that would make all the difference. In being able to read it, and people can read it nice and clearly. It'll be easier for you to see if you're watching on a phone, all those things. So yeah, I think that'd be great. Next question.
TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota is back with, would we want to have a bug for office hours like so many shows do? So anyone showing a snippet of the show would say, that's from office hours.
We could. I mean, I'm not against it. I think that I guess my experience is that the bug becomes something else we have to design around. Suddenly the bug, when we start adding bugs to things, the problem really becomes that suddenly we do a bunch of different graphics and now they're running into the bug, and the bug is something we have to think about all the time and everything else. And so I think that that's the only concern I have, is not adding another element that I have to, if it's inside of SPX and it disappears when it has to and it appears when it can, I'm okay with that. Go ahead, Tuomo.
There we go.
Yeah. The other thing right now is the reason I probably wouldn't do it immediately is because we're not recording a clean feed of office hours. So I think that I probably would lean against it right now because our only record of this is what's in YouTube at the moment. And so we only have a dirty feed of that process. And so if we had something that was really great, if someone else clipped it out, you wouldn't know it was from office hours, but it also means that we're stuck. And I got to tell you how many times I've gotten footage from clients and the only version they have is the dirty feed and you're stuck with that logo on the upper corner that you wish you didn't do. So I think that until we're really happy with it, we probably wouldn't do it over general ones. Now that as soon as Cuomo put it up, I was like, oh yeah, right. I see that. I've seen that picture. It's not a comedy. It's a horror film. So anyway, I'm glad that we can do it, and we may do that in the future once we're doing clean records. And I just got to get more hardware to do that. So we'll take that into account. But right now we don't have a clean record. So that might be something we want to think about. Next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia says, what percentage of the office hours audience is on mobile, which leads to the importance of readability testing on mobile devices?
Well, I think we should definitely make it sure it's readable on mobile devices. And so I think it is currently. I think those questions are readable on the current ones of the lower thirds. When I picked it up on my iPhone, I felt like I could read it comfortably. But I don't think they should. I definitely don't think the graphics or the text should get any smaller than it is right now. I think that it is at its minimum size at the moment. It seems like there's some nodding, so I think there's some agreement that we shouldn't go any smaller. So I think, but I do agree. And usually what I do is I try to look at stuff at 640 by 360 and make sure I can still read it, or I play it out to the phone. But I think if you play it out to the phone now, I think we'll find that the text foremost is readable. No, but if it isn't, let us know and we can take a look at that. Next question.
From Andy Coluccio, he says from Washington, D.C., could we add a flag to Makana that indicates that a panelist wants to use graphics in their answer so that we know at the system layer not to use a super source that could clip the content?
Yeah, we should make that request for Chris. Just to I don't know how I got to figure out the behavior of that, but what the panelist has to do to show it. In general, my goal is that the panelist would only do demos. Like the only time a panelist in the future, the only time the panelist should show a graphic is if they're demoing something from their computer. So if they're going to show something, what we really need is somewhere for them to put a link in, so that our graphics team, eventually, you'll see Dennis doing graphics right now, that the graphics team grabs onto that and manages that on their own so that the panelist doesn't have to show anything. I think that's our goal. But let's think about how that behavior works. We definitely need something where they have a place to put that. I want to do a pass at the panelist view in general to give the panelists more control, give us a more ability to interact with the panelist and have them have more able to creating that deeper interaction with the panelists. I think is going to continue to make the show better. So we're going to do another pass over the next month or two. Next question.
Brandon Buttram in Indianapolis is up next. This is probably a nightmare to implement, but what about putting a person's general location and local time in the upper left when they are on screen?
Well, we have the general location right now. I don't. Oh, you mean up in the upper above? Yeah, maybe. I think that we have the location down below. I don't think we necessarily need to put it in all the time. Again, I try to avoid persistent graphics if I can. I just think it looks nicer to not have too much going on there. But we can keep thinking about that. It's not that it would be that hard. It's just a matter of creating a set of rules because we already have the information of where they are. Their time, I don't think. We could start adding that, but I think that the location and keeping it up, we're seeing it in the lower third now. I don't know if we'd add any more to that. Next question.
Next question from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois says, can Tuomo discuss some of his work with office hours space as well? Are there overlaps in design?
Tuomo, do you have anything you want to show?
Yeah, I will need to ask John's permission to do it. But yes, so we have designed. Okay, so he's giving thumbs up.
I'm going to pull back a little bit and say, because we don't have a lot of time left.
Right.
What I'd like to do is have you do a second hour about it. I think it sounds like there's a lot. Doable. Yeah. Let's schedule this out rather than catching you off guard in the last 7 minutes of the show. Let's back up and either next week or the week after. We'll do a whole breakdown of
right. But just to answer the question, so there's not much overlap.
Right,
so it's pretty much another project completely.
Yeah, but we'll set up a second hour to just look at the graphics because it sounds like there's been a lot of work on it. So it'd be fun to show it off. So we'll maybe either next Wednesday or the Wednesday after we'll do that. Next question.
Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada says, could a bug be integrated into the lower quarter, being the source of the name and location?
I guess I think that we're doing that now. I'm not sure what the bug. Oh, you mean the bug, something coming out of it? Maybe. I think I like the low key nature of our lower thirds right now. I'm not sure if I want to make them more complex. But that can be something we can discuss. Next question.
Comes from Alex Goldner in London. The flag shown when a question is being asked is pretty small. How about a map of the world showing the country or state highlighted on our full screen question being asked beat?
What do you mean by that, Alex?
So if give the flag, I recognize the Union flag there when it was associated with me, but given the fact that we're going to be showing the question full screen when the question asker is asking it, as well as the city they're in, it may be quite nice to actually have essentially a map of the world and showing the country highlighted or the state highlighted. Just if we want to show this as an international thing, and seeing these little different places being highlighted in different time zones is actually quite a nice thing to kind of get that idea across, even different states of the US. So it's just a thought.
I think it sounds like fun. Like I think that having that question come up and having a map and have it, or something, that'd be great. I mean, I don't know what it takes to program that, but I think that I think it'd be fantastic. Like to do that. I want a big powers of 10. You see the Earth come up, and as he asks it, you just see it just flow up to the Earth and land right on that'd be good.
Let's go retro. Have a transmitter tower pop up with those little radiating RKO.
I think everybody puts their GPS information in, and they all do their own. What we have to do is have them all do they all have to have a drone. We'll lend one around, and you have to go from your backyard and go straight up 400 feet.
There you go.
Most link. And then what we do is we add that to the end of a powers of 10 shot, so it goes right down to your house. That wouldn't be weird at all.
No.
Yeah, exactly. And you should look at it. You should be looking at it when it does it, so it just comes right down to the person. That's great. That'd be a great shot.
Perfect.
Yeah. Next question.
Next question comes from Stefan Fisch in Würzburg, Germany. What font is used for the lower third?
What is it, Tuomo? I actually don't know what the font is.
That is a Google font called Barlow.
It's nice. It's good looking. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Miguel Waterman says from Salisbury, Maryland, are there flags for question askers, but not for lower thirds? Can you share the thinking here? There are flags.
I think it would just be really small. Like in the lower third, it would be a very, very small flag, or we'd have to make the lower third bigger. I think that's probably, Alex and Tuomo can jump in, but
Well, yeah, that was just a minimalism thing that we would emphasize the question a little bit by having that flag in there. So that was the thought process.
There we go. It's a good discussion. It's we'll probably have one of these about once a month. We're gonna start spreading these out a little bit. This week we did a lot of internal ones because we just made the change. And again, on Friday we'll talk more about mechanics and how the thing is running and so on and so forth. And so we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail. But I think that we're gonna keep on figuring this out. It's a fun exploration of how all of this stuff works. So stay tuned for more discussion related to that. And we'll just keep talking about it. And over the next 2 months, I think it'll sure itself up a lot. I feel very confident with the talent that's in the team and the work that's been done so far that we really will get to a point where it's a very broadcastable solution. In a perfect world, it's a little earlier because we're hoping to have some people covering NAB from afar. So I'm going to see what we can do as far as resources there. I think it's going to happen now. I think it seems like everyone seems to be pretty confident. So we'll hopefully cover that, but in whatever form we're in. But by May 1, I think we'll be very, very close to what we've been looking for. All right. We're now going to jump to after hours. Thank you so much for the producers. A lot of great questions. The panelists are getting very good at answering your questions with a succinct flow of still great information. They're just moving through them faster. And so the producers are, there's a lot of good questions ahead of time. The more you get ahead of time, the better the answers are going to be. Especially, I would say late afternoon or evening when on the West Coast, and in the morning if you're in Europe or something like that, asking those questions so that when we wake up in the morning we see them early on. We can start. My goal, it'll take time, but my goal is that we'll start having more people like looking at that and trying to figure out notes and really building something out for each one of those. And so the earlier the questions come in, the better. All right, great. Thank you to the panel. Can't do this without you. And a great job by the production team who is making this all work. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into after hours. And now I'm going to wait to see it go black. There we go. See, there's the sweeper. There it is. There's black. Now we'll leave.